My parents are preachers. They met in seminary. And, my dad immigrated here from Jamaica for school. And so, like most immigrant parents, my dad is like, yeah, I need you to be a doctor or, go into computer programming. And I was not interested in any of those. So I kind of wanted to prove him wrong. Like I can make a living, in fashion, which they didn't think I could. And so it was kind of like, going against the grain and saying, okay, well, I have to take care of myself. They're not going to support me going into fashion. I have to figure it out.
Welcome to Career Cheat Code. In this podcast, you'll hear how everyday people impact the world through their careers. Learn about their journey, career hacks, and obstacles along the way. Whether you're already having the impact you want or are searching for it, this is the podcast for you.
All right. Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
How are you doing today?
Good. I'm not much of a fall person. I prefer summer, but, it'll be okay.
Awesome. Well, I'm happy to get you on the show today. And let's just dive right in. Let's tell the world what it is you do for a living.
For sure. I'm Christian McKenzie. I am the director of a fund called Lofty Ventures. So we're based in Chicago and we invest in early stage startups. We're a generalist fund. So any industry, we invest across industries, just they need to be pre-seed, seed stage and be based in Chicago preferably. But we've also made some bets in the Midwest. I manage those deals. We also do a ton of programming. We have free classes for people who want to break into angel investing. We have an angel syndicate. So we can spin those up if people want to invest in companies, either, send us deals or make individual investments themselves. And, we host networking events, we host offsites. So we kind of do a lot of things, I think, for, a company in this space. But yeah, I've been in venture for a few years. It's my third career, but I enjoy it.
Awesome. So what does that mean to be in venture capital world, right? Like how does your day look? How does your week look? Like, what are you looking for? And how are you able to connect with some of the organizations that are looking for some of this funding?
Yeah. So venture capital it's high risk, high return kind of investing, right? So it's kind of for people who already have a well-balanced portfolio and want to add something different in. This is kind of like super high risk, super high return. So, you could lose all of your money, you can make it rich. It's kind of runs the gambit. And so what we do is we scout, privately held small companies in the startup space. So usually tech backed, right? So a software company is normally what we invest in. And with that investment, we build a relationship with the founder. So we help them along the way with any support we can provide, whether it's introducing them to other investors, getting them some specialists to help them maybe with sales or operations or, some of their legal needs. That's kind of the support we provide. And the goal is to help them get to a bigger stage so that they're ready for bigger companies, right? A growth stage venture capital fund that makes bigger bets than we do. Our average check size is $100K into a company. So once they get to the size where they need $1 million or $5 million and they're following that path and, the end goal is either being acquired or going public, right? So either getting acquired by another company or a private equity firm or, IPOing. And when they hit that exit, that's when everybody who invested in the company gets their return. So that's an ideal exit, but it's high risk. Most startups fail. And so if it fails, you lose all of your money. So it's a very specific asset class, but it's exciting because you get a bet on people's dreams, right? A lot of people, when we meet them, they just have an idea. I don't think you can necessarily make your idea happen without some support. It doesn't have to be venture capital. It could be loans. It could be crowdfunding, but it's exciting to play a role in getting something off the ground.
Absolutely. And this is, as you said, high risk, high reward, but also kind of has to be a little patient, right? Like this capital should not be expecting a return within a few months. How long do you typically see for some of these organizations to start turning some returns?
On average, people wait about 10 years for their venture capital investments to actually show some sign of, some financial event that they can benefit from. So since I'm 3 years into this career, I have not personally made bets that have had exits, not big exits actually would be more accurate. So yeah, it's the long game and it's for people who, have a little extra cash to do something, I guess, exciting with, or a little, a little more risky, a little more, I don't know, dramatic, because, obviously a safer thing is the stock market. You know what I mean? Like, this is not the place you go to like put your money and keep it safe. This is a place you go because you want to be part of something that could be big.
That makes sense. So tell me more about some of these additional supports, right? So it's not just the funding. Tell me more about some of the support that you all provide or work with the entrepreneurs on.
I would say, me personally, I think one of my superpowers is networking. So I've had people approach me and say, I need help with, I need a general manager, I need a chief of staff, I need someone to do content and marketing, helping them locate those people and hire them, and maybe it's fractional at first until they have enough money to bring them on full time. We can help them with their hiring needs. Outside of that, helping introduce them to other investors that are early stage and looking to work with early stage companies. Also getting them just like access, right? If they need clients, if they need to be put in front of more people that could use their service or product, we do that as well. And, kind of standard things most firms offer are AWS credits or, an opportunity to use HR software at a fraction of the fee you normally would. Those are the type of things we can also lend to entrepreneurs if they need it.
So what's your kind of ideal type of profile, right? If I'm an entrepreneur listening to this, how do I know if I should contact Christian?
Yeah, I mean, we like to be the first check-in. So we like being contacted super early. I would say someone who kind of knows if venture capital is right for them, which would, to make it clear, they have some sales, they have some customers, they've been, at it for probably at least a year. They're reaching product market fit, which means that, sometimes you launch something and it's very hard to find the right customer. It's very hard to find the right niche, right? You're marketing your service to people in Kentucky, but really New Yorkers are the ones that like it more, right? Like finding all of that out, you're at like a turning point where you have identified those things. And really, you've exhausted all of your options to make it grow. And the capital is really what's holding you back. And you can explain the business case as to why. That's a good time to contact someone like us.
How are you also then proactively finding some entrepreneurs like in the tech space, right? Is this going to conferences? Is this like hosting events? Like how do you just find folks out there?
I would say we don't struggle to find companies to invest in, to be honest, but we do a little of the networking just, to make sure we're not overlooking anybody who would be a good fit. So we do speaking engagements, we sponsor events. Last weekend, a company called Event New War, which we haven't invested in, but we have a great relationship with, hosted a curator summit. And so I moderated a panel, Lofty Ventures sponsored that event, just to kind of get in front of people building cool things. So we do some of that outreach. And we also host our own events I'm thinking we're in 2025, but we're still in 2024. Over the summer, we had a glamping retreat for founders and investors. And so it was 3 days at Off Map, which is a glamping location we invested in. And so we took people out there. We had a former contestant from 3 Survivors do Survivor, theme challenges, just do some bonding, have some fun and get to know some new people. So we definitely do stuff like that as well.
Okay, so it seems like a really kind of two-way communication that happens where you all are either hosting or joining events where folks are already gathering, and also just having a call for folks to contact you all. Mm-hmm. Tell me, how'd you get into the venture capital space?
Oh, I would not recommend doing it the way I did it. It took a very long time. I think it took about 5 years for me to do so. So my background is fashion retail. I was a buyer, so I was selecting products to go in stores. And I really loved working with entrepreneurs and getting to their story and getting to help them. But when you're in a corporate job, you just kind of have that one role. And so I was like, okay, I gotta do something different. I have to find a different way. And I went to a conference for it was Black professional women. And one of the speakers was an executive coach. And I said, hey, I have a big idea. Can you help me with it? And he's like, absolutely. So I worked with him to this day. But what we did was I pivoted to a startup in the retail space because I was like, if I don't have tech experience, who's going to take me seriously as an investor if I've never actually worked for a startup? And then I went to work for Meta in New York, specifically on consumer accounts, which was aligned with my background. And then I applied to business school. I went to NYU Stern, unfortunately, during the pandemic. So I had 6 months in person and then a year and a half remote. And then after I graduated, I landed a role at an institutional fund called Red Cedar Ventures. And I was there for 2 years and I joined Lofty about 6 months ago.
Got it. So just to make sure I understand that path, right? So did you go into business school knowing that you wanted to get into venture capital, or did you have another goal in mind?
I was going to kind of upskill and make that pivot. So I went with the intention, like, I want to be in venture capital and I'm using this opportunity to intern. I had probably about 5 internships at funds when I was in business school to intern, to build that case, to focus on the skill set I would need to be in venture. That was, like the main goal.
Did you know someone in the space, or like what kind of planted that seed for you to think that this was a space that made sense for you?
Loosely, I have a family friend who went into venture, very different story than me. And he did it after going to business school as well. He went to Kellogg and he has his own funds in the suburbs of Chicago. So like I had exposure to like high net worth individuals who went into it. I am not a high net worth individual. I'm a child of an immigrant. I didn't grow up with excess in that way to kind of launch my own thing. So I did have exposure, but it was nothing like it is today. Like Shark Tank wasn't a big deal. It wasn't buzzy and cool. There weren't a ton of people that looked like me launching funds when I went into it. So I think I just knew like something was happening and I wanted to be a part of it in that space. And so I think I actually pivoted at a really good time because I think it would be much harder for me to get in now than it was when I did break in.
Do you have advice for folks that are looking to break in today?
Yeah, I think what worked for me and a lot of my like friends that were bringing in venture at the same time is having great deal flow and sending those deals to funds. So just to take a step back, the bread and butter of every venture capital fund is having access to really great deals. And, the top tier firms, they get exclusive access to, grad straight out of Stanford or dropouts who launch something very cool through their networks already. But they're obviously, that is one, prototype that people try to, it's called pattern matching. They try to say, okay, a lot of Stanford dropouts had unicorns. Let's go after Stanford dropouts or grads. But that means they could be overlooking a ton of other people, right? So if you are following, the Entrepreneurship Center on your campus, or you are talking to maybe economic development corporations and resources like in your local, your county, your city, and you can say, hey, I think this deal would be a good fit for you guys. You want to take a look at it. That means something and that resonates with people if you're sending them good deals. That's a good way to get the conversation started. Like, hey, I can scout. I don't work here. I don't have the resources to go to every single conference or, be in every room I need to be in, but I'm doing what I can. So I think that is a way to kind of start the conversation, get internships or, get a, it's called a venture scout. If you want to do that just for a fund as a freelancer. So that really helps. And I think also building your personal brand matters more than ever. So writing articles, doing thought pieces, letting people know what you think, if you have a unique perspective, or a take on a sector or a movement or a trend. I think that could definitely help build your credibility in this space and people will start seeing you as, this is a great resource for us. We should consider, bringing them on or working with them in some capacity. What's
your favorite part of your role?
The networking, the meeting new people, the hearing about their hopes and dreams, the rush when, the excitement that you see that they're really excited about solving a problem or, I think we try to, at our fund, we prefer to work with people who are solving a problem that they have, not trying to get rich or become famous because they just kind of can't sleep until that problem is solved, right? Like just anything that bothers you and you're just like up day and night, like, I got to make sure I have a solution for this thing. Those are the people we kind of love to work with. And so just the excitement and the rush and just trying to play a role in helping them get there, I think is the part I like the
That
most.
makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. What is the most challenging part of your role?
I would say maybe difficult people who are unnecessarily difficult, right? Like, we're here to help. And I've definitely met people who feel entitled to work with us or demand money from us, or, it's not a reciprocal relationship. They're not going into it thinking, okay, they want to be helpful. And I also, it goes both ways. We've met people who just kind of want the money, but don't want to really tell us what's going on with the company or work with us or be transparent. It's really hard to make an investment in a company if you don't actually know how the company's doing. And so I guess managing those expectations and, trying to find really great people to work with, I think is rare. So, if you run into somebody who doesn't really want to work with you and doesn't want it to be a two-way relationship, that kind of is not my favorite part, but it happens.
In venture capital, right? As someone that is part of a fund like this, how does someone like you make money in the interim, right? I know you mentioned typically it's about 10 years before a successful exit or some returns start coming back into the fund. So how does someone like you continue to be employed or continue to make money in the interim between year 1 and 9?
Yeah. So just like most desk jobs, you have a salary, right? That comes out of management fees. So, you do have compensation while you're waiting for the investments to pan out. So that's how you would support yourself. Mm-hmm. But, I think another thing that you have to keep in mind is that, you are investing other people's money, right? So if you don't perform well, people won't give you money for your next fund and your next fund, because you have a certain amount of time that you deploy that capital and then it's gone. And then you have to fundraise. Again, our model's a little different. We function more like a family office. So that just means that we're not necessarily going out and asking people for money. We have like a family that we represent and we invest their money. But in most funds, like an institutional fund, you have to kind of make those numbers to get to the next level. And people aren't going to work, and no matter who you are, people don't want to work with you if you don't have the great returns, right? If they're losing money working with you, they're not going to keep working with you. So I guess that's a motivator. If you're motivated by stress, you always have to keep that in mind. It's not, oh, great, I got this job, I can just sit here for 10 years. No, you have to perform or this company will cease to exist. So, it's not like I'm doing it for free out of the goodness of my heart. And I can only get paid if the bets do well, but we can only stay in business if the investments do well.
That makes sense. So you have your salary. Are there additional financial incentives if some of the investments pan out really well?
Yes. So based on, whatever percentage equity you take in a company, depending on how well it does, ideally you'd want to 10x your investment, right? That's how a lot of the big funds continue to exist and have billions of dollars of assets under management, because they betted on something that did really, really well. I think it's just waiting for those bets to do well.
That makes sense. Yeah, so it sounds like as an organization or as a fund, the fund definitely makes the additional returns. I think what I'm hearing also is, as the person who found the deal, there's also some upside to you as an employee of the organization to continue to find some good fits.
Yeah. And I would say that back to the venture scouting that I mentioned, if I were, an outside, venture scout and not a full-time employee with my company, venture scouts also should get a cut of the deal if it does well. So there are other levers. I don't know if lever is the right word, but there's other things you can tap into for compensation.
That makes a lot of sense. And, I think accordingly so, right? Like, you're out there finding the right folks. And, people shift jobs and everything, but for the most part, if you're the folks that are actually bringing in good deals, there should be some incentives for that. So that makes a lot of sense. So how much money can someone make in this type of field in venture capital generally? Like
salary ranges? Mm-hmm. I guess it depends on what level you're at. I think entry level, I think you should expect $100K. When you're moving up to, associate, senior associate, the range is wide. That could be, 125 to 250. But again, I think this isn't a job that you can just sit at for forever. If you don't return the fund and have a profit, you can't raise a second fund. So I think that's probably why the compensation structure is that way. And then I would say most of the people I know that are entry level don't get carry, which is a percentage of the deal. But once you're higher up, you get carry. So that's the additional incentive, right? The base is that salary. But if the deal pans out, then you get a percentage of equity in the company. And that's, I think, where you could make more money potentially, because, you put in if you put in $10,000 and they have a 10X, you're 10 times that you could walk home with. So
I know earlier you mentioned starting a career more on the buyer side of things. Would love to hear about how did you even get there, right? So tell me, where'd you grow up? Where were you born? What was your upbringing like? And what did you want to be when you were like 15 years old?
It's going to sound very shallow and silly. I loved fashion my whole life. I lived for prom and dressing up and just, I did some modeling, nothing big. And so I was like, I need to live in New York City. I need to work in fashion. So from New Jersey, my parents are preachers. They met in seminary. And, my dad immigrated here from Jamaica for school. And so, like most immigrant parents, my dad is like, yeah, I need you to be a doctor or, go into computer programming. And I was not interested in any of those. So I kind of wanted to prove him wrong. Like I can make a living, in fashion, which they didn't think I could. And so it was kind of like, going against the grain and saying, okay, well, I have to take care of myself. They're not going to support me going into fashion. I have to figure it out. So I went to Spelman College in Atlanta for undergrad, and the school across the street, Clark Atlanta, had a fashion major program. So once I finished my core classes, I was taking classes across the street as elective credits. And when the recruiters came to campus that were from New York and with retail, I signed up for every interview, and, I got an offer from Macy's in New York, and I was like, yeah, I'm in. That's exactly where I need to be. I'm in the right city. That's what I want to do. And I didn't know it at the time, right? I was just trying to get to New York. It turned out to be a wonderful experience training wise. A lot of retailers have training programs, but at the time, Macy's was known as having one of the best ones. So I think for about 3 months, I became a trainee, and it was a rotational program. So you shadowed store managers, you work with buyers, learned retail math. You went on buying appointments, which means you go to like a brand showroom and see what their collection is coming out and how you make those decisions based on trend reports or based on previous sales. So I really think I got like a really great crash course in breaking in for free because I picked, to work for Macy's. And I was there for 5 years. So it was a great foundation, allowed me to be in New York and go to Fashion Week and volunteer and attend events and network. And, I sat on junior boards of organizations that supported the arts. So that's how I started, not knowing I would end up here. But, it was an experience I really loved.
That's awesome. So Jersey originally, Atlanta, so Spelman for school, mm-hmm. and then back to New York. So what then brings you to Chicago? How'd you end up there?
Yeah. So I think I am at this stage in life where, to your point, when you're 15, what do you want? And I was like, New York and fashion. And, when you're no longer 15 and, all your money is eaten up with rent just to be in New York, it just kind of it didn't feel like I wanted to sacrifice my retirement and being comfortable just to say I live in New York anymore. It was purely just like I had just kind of mentally moved on to, okay, how do you get smarter? If you want to be able to angel invest, if you want to be able to go to conferences and have new experiences, you have to have extra money to do that. And I just didn't think I could do that in New York at the time. So purely it was, looking for a major city, looking for a nice quality of life, and looking for the ability to have money to do interesting things with, all of this exposure I have to entrepreneurs and investors who really, in their free time, they're building something in addition to the day job they have. They're working with their friends to create professional development groups and services. And, I couldn't do that if I didn't have extra cash. So I said, where else could I thrive? And Chicago has turned out to be, a really good choice for me. And also, that first job I got after business school was in Michigan. So I was kind of learning the Midwest and, where I might want to live or where I might want to build a life. So, that's where I am now.
It's interesting because when you look at just purely what you wanted to do when you were 15 to where you are now, they seem pretty far apart. But when you walk us through the story, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Oh, I'm glad it does to you. Please, can I have you call my family? Because they're still worried about me.
That's great. That's great. No, I think there's definitely a theme there, and you became an entrepreneur to some of that as well. And now being on the other end of also kind of supporting entrepreneurs is just, I think it definitely, there is a theme there. There is a thread and something that makes it all make sense. Are there any books, podcasts, forms of media that you've consumed that have helped shape you personally or professionally that you just think people should check this out?
It's hard to pick one. I definitely love to read and love Audible. I guess some of the classics for me that I probably pick up every few years and read again and again are The Richest Man in Babylon or The Alchemist, because I think I read for information, not for entertainment. So they're really nerdy and boring. But the common thread between the two is, your life journey is not linear, right? And if you get too hyper-focused on a specific outcome and a specific way to get there, you miss life. And so, and they have an undercurrent of building wealth and just, basic things that you can do to kind of prepare for the future. But really, it's about learning to just allow the journey, you to be led on a journey and not be so prescriptive about how it looks. And that I find that comforting because I think, I feel like I've had a lot of lives, right? When you're a child of an immigrant and you really only have enough to you have a roof over your head and food to eat, but you might not have enough to go to the best school in the world or, go to France with your friends for fun, right? You get creative and you might feel why don't I have that? Or that's holding me back from where I want to be. You're not allowing yourself to be open to be surprised by a different way to get there. I've had a lot of people kind of look out for me and do things I didn't expect and got me places I never thought I would be. And so those books remind me of that. And then I can't say I listen to a lot of podcasts, but there's one or two Substacks that I'm that's pretty good. I can't say a lot of people's are that. A lot of people's, and just kind of that's stuff I already know or already, heard. I want to say it's called Feed Me is my favorite one right now. It's a fashion journalist, but she has she covers politics, culture, all the things. And that one I every time I read it, I'm I'm so glad I came across this. But Emily Sundberg, Feed Me is her Substack. So, yeah.
Are there any career hacks or career cheat codes that you feel like you've acquired or mastered along the way that you're if folks knew this earlier, they would do this or they should consider doing this?
I feel I'm a little proud of my cold email game. It's, iterations of it, but there are two things I still do if I'm trying to get in front of somebody that I'm having difficulty getting in touch with. One is, sometimes you go to a conference and you can't make it to every single breakout session or every single, speech. Either you can't afford the ticket to go to those or there's a conflict in all the things you want to go to. And so sometimes what I'll do is oh, man, I wish I could have gotten in front of that person. I will go on LinkedIn, even though I think they might be doing away with the hashtags, but I'll click the hashtag from the conference and I will look up that person, what their how their panel went, what were some of the takeaways, what people are posting about it. And, I'll message them and I'll be hey, I was at this conference. I saw that you spoke. I'm so sorry I missed it. These are some of the things I took away just from based on the LinkedIn conversations about it. It sounded impactful. Do you mind if I do a follow-up with you just to, get the information I didn't have a chance to get? And I'm so sorry, it was scheduled at this time and I was in this room, but I promise I was there. Just personalizing it. I get a lot of cold messages that are just kind of hi, we have things in common and we know people in common. Do you want to chat for 30 minutes? And I'm oh my God, I get those 5 a day. There's no way I can just chat with random people because they feel like it, right? tell me why, tell me what I can do for you, tell me what you're trying to get at specifically, and I can opt in or not. So that's kind of worked for me. And then I tell this to like my mentees all the time. I'm a mentor with this organization called Gen Z VCs for people who want to break into venture and are early in their career. If you're trying to get in front of somebody in school and there's a firm you really want to work for, create a panel just around them. You know, a lot of people aren't going to turn down a speaking engagement, right? That's free press for them. So say, you know, I did this when I was at Stern. I created a series of fireside chats with venture capitalists in the specific industries I wanted to work in with one of our entrepreneurship centers. And I moderated them. And so, you know, my name is now aligned with like GPs of funds. And so that allowed me to have the conversation, to get internships, to get in front of them, to network with them, to get introductions. So I would say be thoughtful and have something to offer and not just say, hey, I want your time just because I want it. Say, this is why I want your time. This is why I could feel it was beneficial. And I did my research before even reaching out to you. So you don't even have to fill in the blanks. I'm going to actually ask some kind of hard-hitting questions because I know who I'm talking to and I know what I want to talk about.
These are some great cheat codes. I appreciate that. And it also goes back to the networking piece of your role being your favorite part. It all aligns and comes together when you give away the cheat code. So that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we haven't discussed that the world should know about Christian?
I think I'm in a stage where I'm getting in touch with my roots and allowing that to kind of be shared outwardly. So, you know, not that I was ever like embarrassed by who I was, but I just never talked about being Jamaican or being the child of an immigrant. And depending on where your family's from or, you know, what you guys are going through, some families ask you to assimilate, right? And so an example of that is that the dialect of Jamaica is patois, and my father never spoke it in front of me as a kid because he wanted me to speak proper English and, you know, not have any issues with my pronunciation or, you know, being treated a certain way based on how I pronounce things. And, you know, I think I can't speak patois today, which I wish I could. And I actually, you know, have like a text. It's like an app that changes my text back and forth from patois just to like send my friends who are also Jamaican. And so I'm leaning into my heritage a little more. That being said, so now when it's Caribbean American Heritage Month, I post about all of the people in the venture and startup space who are of Caribbean descent, just if you want to follow them or learn more about us. I host a dinner party series for investors. It wasn't Caribbean specific at first, but the more people I talked in this space are like, I didn't know that about you. That's really cool. It's like, maybe I should have like a Caribbean VC event. So I'm hosting one coming up soon with people that I've been sharing about who I am in my journey, which has been kind of fun. And then in Chicago, which, you know, obviously doesn't have as large a Korean population as the East Coast. I've had to go out of my way to find great Jamaican food or make friends with my same background. And I have like a little crew now. We have a group chat and we go to movies and we have dinner parties. And it's been a fun thing that I never leaned into, but I am now. And it just makes, you know, Chicago feel a little more like home. It's not New Jersey or New York, but it's still a special place. And so that's been fun.
Thank you for joining us on Career Cheat Code today. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did and believe on the mission we're on, please like, rate, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're using, and share this podcast with your friends and your networks. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Career Cheat Code, and tell us people or careers you would like to see highlighted. See you next week with some more cheat codes. Peace.